Welcome to the Andrea Giovino Show. Thank you for all the subscribers. Thank you for the comments. I always love to engage with the audience. Thank you, Jesus, for giving me this platform. I always like to thank the Lord. As you all know, I'm a very devoted practicing Catholic. Today we have on Hollywood Wade from Crime and Entertainment with his story of murder. So we're going to get into it with Wade.
How you doing? Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming, Wade.
No problem, no problem.
So I wanted you to explain to the audience exactly what happened, because you're not a street guy. You're not a murderer. I mean, this just fell upon you, which, you know, when I found out about your story and I read about your story, it's kind of like heart-wrenching what you had to go through.
Yeah, it's one of them things that I think nobody ever thinks they're going to find themselves in, one of those situations, and it's just something that put a lot of things in perspective, because it's a heavy thing. Like, and it's kind of like I can relate to how probably some guys felt in that life, because when you see your name on a piece of paper that says your name versus the state, and they're trying to give you life, like that's a heavy burden to carry. And not only did I have to carry it, but I had to carry it for a period of 5 years.
Wow.
Until this thing finally dropped. So to give a little context on it, this situation began because me and my wife, I had some life-changing events happen. I had a really bad car wreck that hurt my back, and then I actually came in a little late on a scene. I was one of the first people there, but it was obviously after the event took place, where a friend of mine committed suicide.
Oh.
And so that was pretty tragic. And then as I started learning about why he did it, him and his wife were having some marital problems. And so it was kind of like, is that what it comes to? You know, do you stick it out for so long and that's what your answer is? And so long story short, that kind of led to myself, and I take full responsibility, wanting to get a separation.
Okay.
My wife was not for it. She was against it, but I was kind of dead set. We were just arguing a lot. And I didn't want to have the kids constantly growing up with the arguing. And so we decided to split. And I told her, I'm like, look, it's going to take a little while for this thing to get finalized. If you meet somebody, that's fine. I just don't want them in my house, because at the time I was letting her stay at the home and I was still paying the bills. So I'm like, I don't want a guy in my house.
I understand that. A lot of men feel that way.
Right. So, but if you want to do it, that's fine, but you're just going to have to go somewhere else. And that happened. And my wife's a very attractive woman. I knew if she went out looking, it would take her a lot less time to find somebody than, myself. And so when it happened, we filed for divorce because she moved in with that gentleman. We were going to be able to get one in 90 days, which sped things along. We already had everything agreed. And I'd say about 2 or 3 months went by. The split was November. That was the day after Halloween. She moved out. We didn't really talk very much. And around Christmas time, we were trying to figure out what to do with the kids. And we decided that there might still be a little something there. So we were kind of treading the water a little bit, not really knowing what to do. And what we decided was we were going to go ahead and go forward with the divorce, get it done. Then we were going to start dating again, kind of, restart, set the clock back. If it didn't work out, then we're free to go wherever, because we're not married anymore. If it did, we could maybe, get married again, kind of just fresh start it. And that's what we're going to do. And we decided we were going to tell the people that we were seeing that we were going to get back together. And the girl that I was seeing didn't really seem to mind very much, but the gentleman that she was seeing did.
Okay.
And when she broke it to him, he became pretty violent. He broke her phone. He was a little rough with her. And I knew she was going to give him the news, but I didn't know how it was actually going to be taken by him. And I wasn't able to get her on the phone for quite a while. That night, my daughter got off work, and my wife used my daughter's phone to call me and say that he had smashed her phone, and he was at a friend of ours' house.
Wow.
So the way my neighborhood is structured, it's one big community, and there's like different little neighborhoods in the community. So they lived in one that was like 2 communities behind me, but still like from her house to my house, 10 minutes, if that. So it's all fairly close together. So the guy's house that he went to was actually a friend of mine. We had been friends for a while, but he knew me. He knew the situation with us. He knew all the backstory. And eventually he winds up calling me, and this is probably like at 12 o'clock at night, or he texts me, I'm sorry. And he's like, hey, can we talk? And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't know if he meant on the phone or whatever. And he said, I just want to be open. He's like, I got a few questions. I believe you'll tell me the truth, but, I don't want any drama or any BS. And that's important because had he said, if it had been like a threatening, come and meet me or whatever, I have the duty at that point not to go.
Right.
And then you could get in trouble with, the outcomes and things like this. But it wasn't like that. He just said he wanted to talk. So I go down there, I meet this guy. It's like 5 houses down. He's basically wanting to know, since he got that news, have me and my wife been talking before she gave him the news? And I tell him right straight, I'm like, look, it's really none of your damn business.
No, he sounds like an abuser and a control freak.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
That's not his place.
Yeah, and I was like, look, y'all might have had something, for whatever period of time. I said, but that's still my wife.
Right.
And I don't really know you an explanation.
And the mother of your children.
Yeah, and the mother of my children. And I said, I don't know you an explanation, but I'll tell you no. And I told him no, even though I was lying. I didn't want to upset him more.
Right.
Send him back over there to where my wife and kids are. My son was like 5 at the time. My daughter was like 17 or 18. Or actually he was like 10. He was like 10, my son. But either way, I didn't want to send him back over there where I don't have any, idea of what's going on.
Right.
So we talk in this garage for, I'd say, a period of about 2 hours. We met at like 12. It was probably like 3 o'clock when we go to leave. Now, even though it started out a little confrontational, after that it leveled off because he knew he wasn't going to get anything from me.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, even though it was a weird situation, it was kind of like 3 dudes hanging out in a garage. It wasn't really anything, physical, or there was no threat of violence.
So you didn't sense anything from his energy of...
Not after he knew he wasn't going to get what he was looking for. Because really, what else can you do? Like, if he's asking this and I'm saying no, what else have you got?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Even though he probably thought I was lying, there was no way he could prove it. And this situation, we started talking about each other's kids and families. He had 2 kids from a previous marriage, and he had spent time in the military. He was Army. The friend of mine whose house we were at the time, he was former Coast Guard. So they were like swapping stories.
Okay.
It really became 3 guys just hanging out in the garage. So the threat of violence, at least to me, was nowhere present. And even the guy later on, when he had to give a statement to the police, he said the same thing. So he's like, I'm going to go ahead and go to bed. He's like, or you want to stay here? He was talking to the guy. His name was Liam. And he's like, no, he said, I'm going to just get Wade to run me home. And so my buddy looked at me. He was like, are you good with that? And I said, yeah, I'm good with it. And so we get in the car, and he's like, if I go home, we're probably going to start arguing. And I just kind of like shrugged my shoulders. I'm like, well, I was with a girl for 15 years. I know how she can be. You might be right. I don't know.
Right.
And he was like, I really don't want to go home, man. He said, do you care if we go to your house? And like a part of me was a little skeptical, but then I was like, well, we'll probably just go and like I'll hang outside or maybe hang out in my garage. So we pull in the yard, and like I said, I'm only 6 houses away from this guy. We pull in the yard, and he starts telling me a story about a bracelet he's wearing that's in remembrance for a guy he was in the Army with. And he tells this vivid story of his buddy that got shot in the Army, and he's trying to like keep his head together. The Army said he didn't do something right, and so he got kicked out of the Army for it. And he begins to cry in the car. He's a grown man crying.
He sounds like he has some really...
He was diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah, deep-rooted issues.
Yeah. But the thing was, I found this out later, the story was fabricated to a point. He was not in combat with him. He was intelligence.
Okay.
He gave this gentleman bad intel that led him into getting shot and killed. That's why he was kicked out of the Army. So I'm sure it still affected him. But the way he painted it to me was like he was in combat with them, and he just kind of exaggerated the story a little bit. Now, as we'll get into, I don't know if this was had me to drop my guard or whatever. If it was, it worked. Because
I think it would have dropped anyone's guard when you see someone like that's hurting and breaking down.
Yeah, anytime when you start to cry and you're showing your vulnerability, people are going to be...
that would be any threat.
Right. So at that point, we did get out. We did go in the house. I had cameras in my house, but they only recorded or like kept track of like when the doors open. They would record only if there was a break-in. So like if the alarm was set and somebody broke in, then they would record. This was before Ring was very popular. Now, man, everybody's got it coming to the doorbell and everything else. We didn't have that back then. So we go in, we're in there probably another 2 hours sharing stories, his kids, my kids. He was going out for smokes. And we get to a point where we're talking about tattoos. And as you can see, I've got 1 or 2. And I was showing him the one on my chest right here. and he sees this scar. I don't know if you can see that.
Yes, I do see
Open heart
it.
surgery scar.
Uh-huh.
So I had open heart surgery in 2001. And he sees that, and he kind of picks my shirt up to see the whole scar. And I don't know how he didn't see it. If he did see it, he didn't reference it. But I did have the gun on my side. So I give a little background on the gun. I'm from South Carolina. All right. I was a licensed CWP holder.
So you have the right to bear arms?
Yes.
I have the right to bear arms in Pennsylvania, and I am a licensed gun owner, and I'm a responsible licensed gun owner also. I don't usually put that out there, but being that we're speaking about it, you know.
Well, you need responsible gun owners. Responsible gun owners get a bad rap because of irresponsible gun owners.
Right.
So to do it the right way is important. And I'd had that license for probably a year and some change. The gun I'd had for 4 years. So it's not like I just went out and bought this gun 3 days before.
Right.
I'd owned guns since I was 18. At this point, I was like 35. I had multiple handguns, rifles, you know, a slew of them. I wouldn't go so far as to call myself a collector, but I do enjoy having firearms. So he sees this gun. There's no way he didn't notice it, but he didn't mention it. Now, when I left to go meet at the garage, I carried it, but it was my carry weapon. I always carried it. You know, when you go out the door, that's just like part of the outfit. Sunglasses, keys, wallet,
and my gun.
Phone, and gun. So when we come back, I always take my gun off upstairs because I've got no bedrooms in the first floor of my house. Well, I never went upstairs. We were always in the downstairs for the entirety of while he was there. So he pulls my shirt up. He sees that scar, didn't mention the gun. And he looks at me and he goes, you know, under different circumstances, you and I probably could have been really good friends. And he kind of gives me one of those bear hug things that, you know, the guys will do, picks me up a little bit and then puts me back down. He was a pretty big guy. He's above 6 foot, pretty muscular. I mean, he was in the Army, so he was a pretty decent sized guy. After that, he's like, where's your bathroom? So I point him to the bathroom. At this point in time, I hadn't checked in with my wife probably since 12:30 when I told her I was going to the other gentleman's house. So I sent her like a real quick text, and I'm like, hey, just letting you know everything's good. And this is probably 5:45 in the morning. This is how long this has been. So I'm kind of standing in my kitchen just waiting on him to come out. He comes out of the bathroom, and the hallway, when you come out of the bathroom, it just kind of opens up to the kitchen area. And I'm standing with my back to the stove. Andrew, he walks straight up to me and boom, hand up under me like that.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
What a psychopath.
And no warning, no words, no nothing.
So he's starting to choke you out.
It was I wouldn't say it's so much of a choke, but it's kind of like trying to control me. You know, he lifts up like this. I actually come off of the floor onto the stove. I've got like the flat top stove.
Oh my God.
And my head at that point is kind of being pushed behind on the cabinet. And so I was able to kind of slide, get back on the floor, and he looks at me dead in my eyes. I'll never forget it. It's a really vivid memory that I think about. And he looks at me and he says, I'm going to fucking kill you. And at this point, I'm like, I'm still hoping that at some point he's going to start laughing.
Did you say, get your hands off me?
Yeah, well, the first thing mentally.
He's got you like this. Did you go like try to get him?
I'm trying. One thing I'll preference, and this is kind of a key part of the story, I had just had a back procedure about a week before this.
Okay.
This stems from that car wreck that I mentioned. That was kind of part of what set all these dominoes in motion to fall. So my mobility was extremely limited. When I do finally get back on the floor and he says, I'm going to fucking kill you, I tell him, I was like, if you don't get off me, I'm going to shoot you. And he cocks his hand back and he comes across and I can see it coming. So when he's holding me like this,
was he drinking?
He was.
He was. That's what alcohol gets you.
Well, and I'll tell you something else that was involved in it too. We'll get to that story. He was also on steroids.
Oh, so the combination.
As well as PTSD medication,
right? But
like Prozac. So all three of those, that's like a
recipe
cocktail.
For disaster.
Yeah, 100%. So I see this punch coming. I kind of lift my chin up just a little bit, so he like clips me. It's not like a full hit to the face. When he does that, it goes over the hand that he's holding me with, so he kind of breaks it and stumbles a little bit. He's already starting to come back. At that point, I stepped back into the corner. I drew out my weapon and I shot.
And you killed him.
I did. It wasn't immediately. I thought it was twice. It was so loud and it was quick succession. I thought I only heard two. It turns out later on that there was 3 shots. But he immediately dropped.
Would you have a 9mm?
It was a 9mm.
That's what I have. And it holds a 15 clip.
Yep. Smith & Wesson 9mm. It's like the gray and black, the light gray on the top, black on the bottom. And, you know, he immediately drops. And in my mind at that point, I'm thinking, I had to do this. You know, he said he was going to kill me. He was already coming back at me once he let me go. I didn't have a choice.
So with that, okay, did you grab your phone? Did you call the cops?
Immediately. First thing I did.
Okay.
Matter of fact, there's a portion of the 911 call. I can try to get them to you if you like, but when the 911 operator answers the phone, you can hear him in the background. They call it the death moan.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the
grasping.
Yeah,
for
the
air.
grasping. You could hear that in the background, which was key because it proves that I wasn't trying to stage anything or hide anything or move anything. Right. I immediately called. I didn't want them to die.
No, but I mean, it's like the whole situation is traumatic. You trying to help a guy, bringing him in the house, and then for that to happen and turning your whole life upside down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a roller coaster from there. So I make the call to 911. She said, stay on the phone till the guy, first responding officer, gets there. He gets there, goes in. They place me in cuffs, and he's like, this is just while we assess the situation.
Okay.
I'm in the car for maybe an hour. By now, it's like 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock. People are starting to wake up. This started on a Saturday night. It's now Sunday morning. Everybody's going to church, and they're passing. And I got cop cars all down the street.
No,
SUVs,
murder.
ambulances. I mean, it's, the whole neighborhood's talking about it at this point. But I'm still in the back of this cop car. My wife had been notified. I seen her pull up out of the back window, and I'm sitting there, and this lady cop comes over, and she actually reads me my rights. She said, you're going to be placed under arrest. She reads me my rights, asked me if I want to answer any questions, and I said, no, not without a lawyer. I watched enough TV to at least know that. And so at that point, I'm thinking, all right, well, I guess I am going to be arrested. So in my mind, I'm starting to figure out what I need to do. About another hour goes by. I'm still in the car. I asked him if I could use the bathroom, and he's like, no, you can't. And I'm like, well, I'm going to. It just might be in his car. And so they eventually let me out. They go in the house. I use the bathroom. And they said, is there somewhere you can change clothes? I said, yeah, this is my house. I live here. I can go upstairs and change clothes. So he does that, and he says, is there any way you can go while we finish our investigation? And so I'm like, all right, I'm under arrest. Now they're telling me I can go somewhere while they finish the investigation. So I'm thinking they're starting to figure it out. Yeah. The pieces are starting to fit. So I do that. They come probably an hour or so later. It's probably like 12 o'clock. And he says, do you want to come into the station and answer some questions? I said, I will, but I'm not coming without a lawyer. And so I told him the lawyer at the time, which was the divorce lawyer I was using. And he said, yeah, we know him. We'll get with him and set up a time. I'm like, all right. And so after that, they let me go.
Okay. So with that, your life had to be turned upside down because, like you said earlier, it took 5 years for the case to play out. So were you working at the time? I was employed. Matter of fact, well, like I said, when they let me go at that point, I wasn't under arrest. Right. I went and issued a statement on Monday. On Tuesday, the lawyer called me and said, hey, they're charging you. He said, they're charging you a murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. You got to turn yourself in tomorrow. Did you get fired from your job? I did. Yeah, because I would think and it was it in the newspaper? Yep. It was in the newspaper. So when that all happens, your life gets like it's a mess. I didn't get fired until after I got out. I was actually off of work because of that back injury and the procedure that I had. I wasn't supposed to go back until 2 weeks from then. So when I got charged, I got a different lawyer other than the one I was using, one that was highly prominent in the area for criminal law. He set everything up. We went and talked to him. He said, I don't know why they're charging you, but, I don't think this is something that we can't take care of. Were you on any substances at the time? No. Were you drinking? We had been drinking at my home. Were you drunk? No. Okay. And they didn't even breathalyze me. Okay. When at some point in the night, I think me and him had done 2 shots at my home. Okay. But outside of that. That was it. That was it, at least for myself. Right. At that point, I do get arrested. I do have to go turn myself in. He got it pushed back a couple of days. I didn't have to go back till Friday. Spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He got it pushed all the way back till Sunday. Luckily, the court was in our county, so I was able to get seen the next day, and I got bond. So that right there tells you something. Like, they don't have to give you bond on a murder. No, they don't have to give you bond. What a nightmare. Yeah, and I'd never been, let's set that straight. I'd never been to prison before. Never been arrested for anything. Wow. My first time, I'm going in there for this. So that's like a whole nother podcast in and of itself, just the experience in there. And I get out. Well, I'm supposed to report back to work that next day. I go back to work and they fire me. So, as the case played out, did you have to go to trial?
No. So we had a preliminary hearing where basically it's not really a trial. It's kind of to present evidence for the reason why they charged you. The detective lied numerous times. It was a female detective. She had just gotten promoted.
They love to do that because they like to get a notch on their belt.
Yep.
I can't stand that.
I was
mean,
her first case.
Yeah, they do like to do that.
That's what I was told, that she was trying to make something out of this.
Yeah.
And
Her name in the paper, and she had you convicted, because every person they get convicted is a notch on their belt.
yeah, that's how they get promoted.
That's how
is
they get
putting people in
promoted.
prison
100%, yeah.
for long stretches of
Yes.
time. And if you don't have the financial means to get a good lawyer, most people have to take a plea deal.
Yes, and it's horrible for them.
it
and I
is.
know a lot of people that happened to, because they couldn't afford attorneys.
Well, luckily, the company that I work for, even though they did fire me, and I'm still a little salty about that, they had a generous profit sharing program. So I had about $150,000 in my 401k.
Oh, that was good.
So that helped.
held you over.
And once they fired me, I was able to get that out.
Okay.
But almost all of it went to the lawyer.
What did you do for a living?
I was worked for a steel company, a large steel company called Nucor Steel.
Okay.
And I made pretty decent money, around 80 to 100,000, depending on how much overtime I worked. So not terrible.
Okay.
Pretty good schedule. Only worked basically 6 months out of the year. So it was a good job. It's one of those jobs that if you get it, nobody leaves it. They're going to retire.
Let me ask you this question. So, with this, how did your wife deal with you?
She was very, very, she blamed herself. And I tried to tell her, I'm like, look, you can't blame her. I said, people split up and get back together all the time. I said, you can't control how someone else acts. I mean, you look right now, Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck just got back together.
Yeah.
When she left Alex Rodriguez to go back with Ben, you didn't see A-Rod trying to beat him down with a baseball bat.
No.
It
happens.
Yeah, so you can't control how other people act, and it really did affect her. But once that preliminary hearing was over, we really didn't do anything for another 5 years because COVID happened.
Right.
The solicitor, which we call, or our version of DAs in South Carolina, the solicitor changed like 3 times. And then finally, I started doing a podcast. Now, I didn't speak about my experiences. I just interviewed people.
Okay.
I met Anthony Ruggiano.
Right.
Came to New York. They let me come to New York,
Okay.
even though I was on house arrest and couldn't go anywhere because it was with the podcast
When
and
did
it
you
was
start
working.
your podcast? Is this the one, Crime and Entertainment?
Yes, ma'am. 2022.
Oh, so
think.
you've had a podcast for a while.
Yeah. And I come to New York, meet him. I do some stuff in studio. It went well. We come back to do another session. Every time we do this, I've got to get everybody notified, tell them where I'm
Where you're
going,
going,
when I'm
yes.
coming back and all that. Finally, my lawyer's like, look, this is enough, 5 years, like, let's go. Let's do something. And he asked me, he said, if you're cool with it, we can do this. He said, it's a risk. We're going to show them everything we've got.
Right.
We're going to lay it on the table. They're going to know everything. And he said, no, the downfall is they know. So if they say, well, this is weak, then they can still go ahead and go to this immunity hearing. Now, the immunity hearing isn't the trial. If I get immunity for self-defense, we don't go to trial.
Right.
Protects me from everything. He said, so it can be so damning that they can just drop it, or they can say, you know what, this is weak. We think we can win. And I said, I had a good feeling about our case, and I was like, all right, we'll do it. And so they hired a CSI forensics expert from New York, actually, upstate. He come down and basically he explained away every reason why they fired me, or charged me.
Charged you.
They were saying that we didn't have a struggle, like I said. He took the arriving officer's body cam footage. You've seen a shot glass on the floor, a knocked over Manhattan rocks glass on the counter, evidence of a struggle. They thought, or they were trying to say that he was farther away from me than they really were. 2 of the bullets that went through him hit a refrigerator and bounced and hit a wall. The other one went through a 24-pack of water and was like in one of the bottles in the middle. So when they went through, because we were so close, they had a chance to V. Had he been further back, they would have been side by side. So that kind of debunked that. Another one was they said, well, you didn't have any blood on you because you had a white T-shirt on. You should have had some blood on you. Well, this gentleman was wearing 3 shirts. He had like a T-shirt, a long sleeve shirt.
Did you have any marks at the time when they came from choke, when he had you up against?
There was some marks. They took some pictures of that. The face was red from that hit. But by the time they took all those pictures, it's like 5 hours later. So it wasn't as prominent as...
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So we go through all that, and we don't hear anything. We submit all that. The solicitor actually comes to my house. He sees the refrigerator. I never changed that refrigerator. The dents from the bullets were still there. The mark on the wall that it hit was still there. And he sees this. He's visualizing it all. You can tell he's taking it in. He's not just, okay, all right, well, let me get on out of here. I actually gave him the glass that was knocked over, like a whiskey glass. He could feel how heavy it was. So they leave, had a good feeling about it. This was in August of 2023. Didn't hear anything through November, or 2022, excuse me. Didn't hear anything through November. Didn't hear anything all the way up until, September, October, Halloween, October. Anthony Ruggiano's birthday. Okay. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to come up here for his birthday party. I get a call from my lawyer, which wasn't out of the ordinary. He would call me every once in a while, so it wasn't like when I seen his name pop up, I said, oh, this is it. So I answered the phone, and he said, how you doing? I said, well, I've been a little better. I said, I think I'm coming down with the flu. And he said, well, I got some news that might make it better. He said, you're now a free man.
Why?
They had dropped it.
They dropped it.
Completely dropped the case.
Not enough evidence?
Not enough evidence.
Thank you, Jesus. I mean, thank God. But it had to still wear on you with all that you had been through. You
can't imagine. Like, the first event that I had to get permission to go to was my daughter's graduation, which was right after the shooting. They allowed me to go, but that was it. I had to come back home. Couldn't go anywhere to eat.
How did the community look at you, your neighbors? And
my friends knew me, and they understood.
Okay.
The people that didn't, they looked at me like I was that guy.
Like in the school and stuff.
Yeah.
Like the backlash for your kids.
Yeah. My daughter was a senior because, like I said, I was able to go to her graduation. Can't even enjoy that because I'm wondering if I'm going to see my son's graduation.
It's hard. I know, because when I was arrested, it's very hard to deal with that. And I sympathize what you had to go through because it's very difficult.
Luckily, my son was so young that I don't think at that age they didn't really comprehend what was going on, and the chatter wasn't as much. My daughter literally, like I said, graduated maybe a month after all this. So if there was anything, she didn't have to deal with it very much either. So it really kind of worked out in that respect.
How is
the community was bad, though.
How is it with your ex-wife now? Are you guys friends?
No ex. We never got the divorce.
Oh, you never got the divorce?
No, we were in the process of doing it.
Are you with her?
I am.
Oh my God. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's wonderful.
So because it was obviously I needed to come up with the money to do this.
That's enough to close the show.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's really great. So then you got your family back, but he was a crazy guy.
Yeah, it was. I told her, I said, you know how to pick him.
I'd love to have you back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for coming on. Hollywood Wade.
Yes, ma'am.
Crime and Entertainment. He's on Instagram. He has his own podcast. Mm-hmm. This was so interesting. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Jesus, for giving me this platform. And we'll see you next time. Hopefully he'll come back.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.